Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And I've got a very creative guest for you today, Kay Chan, and he is your outstanding freelance presentation designer. He's got a huge background in design, making presentation, and a lot of creativity. And I'm really happy to have such entrepreneurs on the show to help enlighten and educate and entertain and inform the guests. So, Kay, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I mean, this is going to be exciting. I don't do this
Yeah.
often, but whenever I do, it's always more enlightening. I get more than what I give.
Yeah, I love that. And so, start off, I know because, we have similar backgrounds. My parents were first generation immigrants. And so, talk about your story and how you came to have such a creative career.
Well, I'll skip over the whole first gen stuff. I mean, I escaped, my family escaped the war. You know, I'm essentially, the first generation when it comes to, the United States because obviously, it was during the Vietnam War. But I'll skip over to, I guess, just prior to when I started my business. Prior to starting my business, I worked for several Fortune 500 companies. Prior to that, I was taking almost any odd design jobs I could land. And the reason why I started so small was because I decided at a very early age to not attend college. Much to my parents' chagrin, the decision was made with a personally adamant idea that creativity couldn't be taught. I think it can be learned, but it just couldn't be taught. I had a tremendous passion for the arts as a kid and my love for illustrations, comic books, painting, poetry, photography, all of that guided me for pretty much the entirety of my life. I involved myself in that passion whenever I could. I simply had, a love for creating something out of nothing. I'm pretty sure a lot of your listeners can, relate to that. Um, so when the age of internet came about, and this is around the same time I finished high school, I immediately converted my talent and passion towards the digital arts like website and graphic design. It was a struggle, and I battled with my decision for a long time, and often regretted not going to college. I took on various small paying jobs, and I mean really small, all of which were an effort to build up my portfolio. Eventually, the years of grinding on low income paid off. The experience and the years of learning on the job to this day, I would advocate to be significantly more beneficial for my career. Since then, I've worked for corporate standouts like Consigli, CVS, Hasbro. I'm sure you've heard of some of them, and I've had I've held positions from uh, entry level to say director of creative and have built an outstanding portfolio in the process. My biggest victory in life is also never having to worry about a student loan. So there's that. I'd say my biggest break was during COVID when I decided to cater to a more niche market in presentation design. I did this while during my last year at Hasbro, where I founded Khimeric Presentation. Focusing on presentation design as my niche allowed for a much broader entryway to my other design services. Most of my clients reach out to me for presentation design services, but end up keeping me as their one-stop shop for all things creative. So it's kind of a nice breaking point. And finding chimeric presentation came at a great time actually. In less than a year, uh, Hasbro had a massive layoff, and I was unfortunately one of the many that were forced to accept the severance package. Because my business was so successful, however, in my first year, it became apparent to me that I no longer needed to be a part of that corporate structure. Chimeric has been thriving since. I'm sorry. I thought you asked that. So, well, here's the thing. A lot of my clients are PhDs, and they're very well educated. And I'll tell you, I often feel like I'm the dumbest person in the room until we start talking about design, marketing, and aesthetics. So many of them are caught in the weeds of facts and knowledge that they forget they're trying to sell a product, brand, or service. And a lot of them are public speakers. You'd be amazed by the amount of doctors and scientists I've come across that have handed me presentations they've worked on and how easily those can be confused with pages of an encyclopedia. My initial reaction in most cases are, are you trying to sell something or are you trying to put your audience to sleep? Well, the way I would seek their help for medical advice or psychological evaluations, which I probably should do more, should be the same way they should seek my help for marketing and messaging strategies.
Yeah, that's a really interesting introduction. One thing one thing that is that came to my mind when you were talking is because you are self-taught, and usually I think these days, you know s- I think school is has a specific role, but if you are doing like you're doing creative or kind of entrepreneurial things, school may not be the best course of action for a lot of people. So talk about your self-taught mastery, and what are some of the most valuable resources and methods you use to master your craft? Because these days, a lot of entrepreneurs now, social media has been a huge tool for them. Technology has been cheaper. What were those that helped you to succeed?
I'm so glad you brought this up. Uh, During my early days, and I may be dating myself with this admission, but I started off illustrating. That was my go-to. I mean, if you remember when Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle first came out, that was my muse. Every day that was what I was drawing until I had a passion for Marvel, and then I started drawing comic strips, just for my own entertainment. Um, and this is before the digital age. This is before internet. When you wanted to pick up and learn Photoshop, Quark, or Flash, and those two are programs that nobody even really uses anymore. So I delve into it years after years. Just every single time they had a new product launch, I was purchasing them and I was buying books and I was burying myself in it, trying to learn every single thing that I could. And this is without going to school, but at the same time, I was so adamant about, wanting to, accomplish something, wanting to be able to master these tools. And we're not just talking about those two programs. We're talking about, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, Quark, Flash, Dreamweaver, things of that. I'll tell you what, people in my field who are starting off are severely underpaid for the amount of things that they have to learn. But, you know, the things that I learned wasn't really, I mean, the benefit of me, going into that field without a college structure, without any type of tutelage, was being hands on the field and, knowing, understanding the reaction of clients, understanding the reactions of your managers, and understanding, how the process of a workflow actually is, how it actually flows. And those are things you can't really learn as a student, in college. So we didn't have social media back then. Everything was learned on the fly. And I'll tell you what, the technology back then was, I mean, when we back at it now, I mean, I've taken a gander at some of my old work and how I processed designing some of the things that I designed, and looking back on notes that I've taken in the past, and instructions on like how to do certain things, and I'm like, how the heck did I even do this with that type of limited technology? Because we've advanced so far nowadays. So yeah, essentially, when I needed to learn something, it wasn't clicking on YouTube, it wasn't going on a website because those didn't exist yet. I literally had to go out and buy this thick, massive book for like $50. And that was essentially it. That was the way I learned. And then it was just practicing and practicing and practicing, taking designs that I wasn't happy with that other people have done, and making it better. And that was how I achieved the status that I have achieved.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like I said, school can either help you or hinder you. And like as a creative, like for the audience out there, if they're kids, they're creatives or they're entrepreneurs, you have to really be very strategic in how you use school. Because I mean, how um, school can be really great for networking and developing relationships, and getting that pedigree to help you, but it can also hinder you in terms of forcing you to think a certain way. And as a creative or an entrepreneur, you have to kind of take things from totally separate fields and put them together in new and interesting ways. So, which kind of brings me to my
Don't get me
next.
wrong, Chris. Don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating, don't go to school. I'm saying
Yeah,
it wasn't for me. Okay. This can be very beneficial for any of the listeners out there, for you to go to school, but for me, it wasn't it. I'm sorry, I cut you
yeah.
off. Go ahead.
No, it's quite interesting because this podcast has been like on for like 3 years, and like even before then, the mantra was go to school, get an education, and now I'm really hearing like kind of 60% of the conversation is shifting to is school really the best way? Because a lot of people they like dance or art or creative, and they're like, yeah, this school thing doesn't really fit into how it's not gonna help me, it's just gonna hinder me, it's gonna put me into student loan debt, and it's just kind of so, like I said, it has a place, which kind of brings me to my next question is this art of presentation design, and what makes your design so stand out? And because I mean, you're self-taught and you kind of made it your own. So how does it stand out against the, I mean, probably thousands, hundreds, tens of thousands of, other people that are also doing the same thing as you?
That is such a great question. I was hoping you'd ask that. Well, here's the thing. In my field, as a graphic designer, there's a plethora of people that can probably do what I do, probably at the same level. The thing is that when it comes to presentation design, the people who are in graphic design don't even want to touch it. They don't. So when I was not doing presentation design and I was just doing graphic design, we're talking about packaging, we're talking about branding, we're talking about, logo design, we're talking about brochures and all that stuff. I was competing against the masses, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of graphic designers. Do I stand out amongst them? I'd like to think so. But if you search far and wide enough and are willing to, pay a certain premium, you're going to probably find someone better than me in that aspect. But as far as, I like to determine that I value myself accordingly. But when it comes to presentation design, and this goes back to when I was working in corporate, when I was working in agencies, I will tell you that nobody within the agencies, within those corporate environment, will know or understand how to use PowerPoint, Keynote, Google Slides correctly. None of them. And to this day and age right now, when I was working in just graphic design alone, how I said I was competing with hundreds of thousands of people across the globe. That number has dwindled down to maybe just a few thousand, just in presentation design alone. Now, that market has been saturated lately because a lot of people do find that this is actually a pretty, good environment to work in, and it's actually, very beneficial monetarily. The problem is that those that do jump into presentation design don't have my background as a graphic designer. So the reason why a lot of graphic designers don't fall in line to using PowerPoint, Keynote, or Google Slides, or even Canva for that matter, is because they don't feel that that's a proper design tool. It's the ego, it's the pride, it's all of that that will prevent them from actually even touching it. And the few who do, like myself, who bit the bullet and was like, you know what, this is such a niche market. I'm going to attack this head on, and I'm going to use all the tools available to me and all the skills and experiences that I've had with graphic design using other tools to help complement this limited tool. I made it work. I made PowerPoint into a design tool that it wasn't even meant to be. And you're going to get a premium. I mean, you're going to get premium quality. You're not going to, it's essentially graphic design, but in presentation form.
Yeah, again, really interesting. And I know we have kind of a couple minutes left, around 4 minutes left. So talk about how people can find you and check out your work, and if they need help in this area, reach out to you.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're doing a lot of public speaking, or if you just need any design work done, we're talking about logos, brochures, and whatever, easily visit my website, khimeric.com, Khimeric. Or you could reach out directly to me at k@chimeric.com.
Awesome. And for all the audience, let's thank Kay for coming on. And like I said, I love talking to creatives and just, picking their brain. And for the audience, hopefully you got some tidbits and nuggets. Be sure to give Kay's socials a like and following and reach out to him. And thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, also reach out to me too if you love golf because that's my new addiction. So I'll talk golf with you all day.